righty, let's get right into it, shall we? Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Friday night live stream for Week 4 of the 2024 fantasy football season. Over the course of the next hour plus, I'll be answering your guys' questions. Again, a reminder, if in fact you are going to send in a question, whether that is via the super chat for priority or via the live chat, please be sure to include your scoring format, whether that is standard, half PPR, full PPR. All-encompassing context does make it that much easier for me to answer your questions, and of course, for us to have a great time in this overall circumstance, and hopefully capture a victory in Week 4. Again, there was a lot of information that was kind of detailed today and relayed out to the public based on overall injuries, and there's still a lot of uncertainty as to some players. Now, obviously, there are good signs. For example, Sam Laporta, a full participant in practice. George Kittle off the injury report. Those are great signs at the tight end position. But then there are other uncertainties as to who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins come Monday night. Is Deebo Samuel going to end up playing this week? How do we replace, a lot of our players who are potentially missing? Devontae Adams, Tank Dell already, designated out going into the week. Over the course of today's live stream, hopefully we'll continue to help you in the right direction, whether it's picking up players, starting players in the right positions, and of course, making trades. Outside of that, again, over the course of today's live stream, I will go ahead and put together a couple pick'em slips, and I will share what I put together going into this upcoming weekend. I did include it in today's Hidden Gems video, which of course is highlighted by Jacoby Myers due to the absence of the one and only Devontae Adams. There is a lot more value in the, absence of him based on this offense, and the fact that this offense has not been able to effectively run the ball thus far this season. They're going to have to go to an air raid in order to try to defeat the Cleveland Browns. Okay, let's get into answering some of these questions, beginning with our number one. Let's see here. We have Go Bills, who sends in a question, says, Andrew, would you play Cam Akers? Assuming, of course, Joe Mixon is going to be out. Now, if I go and I check the injury report for the Houston Texans, based on what it says as it currently stands, Joe Mixon was a limited participant in Friday's practice, did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. So, under the assumption that Akers is even implicated to be the starter because Mixon is designated out by tomorrow or Sunday morning. If it's Akers, Rachaad White, Jacoby Myers, or Michael Wilson over Garrett Wilson in a full PPR, I'd probably say no to any of those available options. I think the closest option that I'd feel most comfortable with is Jacoby Myers, but in this circumstance, I just play my stud. I'd roll with Garrett Wilson. If you want to take the risk of benching Wilson in this given matchup against, of course, Patrick Surtain II, I wouldn't mind it, but again, that's a decision you'll have to make on your end. I wouldn't rank Myers ahead of Garrett in this circumstance. Thank you for the question. Go Bills. Appreciate it. OJ Running sends in a question. OJ says, drop Charbonnet or Shaheed for Brooks in a PPR. Currently, both are sitting on my bench. Long-term play. If we're looking for the long-term play, we're benching Charbonnet and we're picking up Jonathan Brooks. Charbonnet is only valuable if you still have Kenneth Walker on your team. Again, Kenneth Walker, even if he doesn't play this week, will eventually return and be the clear-cut number one running back of the organization, and that's going to continue as such. Now, in the case of Shaheed, again, he still has an immense value. Chris Olave earlier today went down with a hamstring injury at practice, could end up missing some significant time due to that. Obviously, we're not 100% privy to the significance and the intensity of that, the degree of the injury itself. It could just be like a minor tweak. He just, felt some sort of way and he just went and got taken care of. You never know. But yeah, I'd probably drop Sharbs unless you have Kenneth Walker. And if you do have Kenneth Walker, you drop Shaheed, and absolutely need to pick up Brooks, assuming, of course, you can't put him on your IR going forward. Thank you. All right, after that, we had a question that came in from Eric Sanchez, but it was not attached as per usual. Eric is leaving me to the chat to suffer. Eric, thank you. Let's see here, Eric. Eric Sanchez says, hey, Andrew, should I trade away Higgins plus Kincaid for London, or trade Higgins and Moss for London, or just stay with Higgins? Got it. Okay, so considering what you would have to give up in order to acquire Drake London, let me see the context of your team. You have Devontae Smith, Marvin Harrison Jr., Deontay Johnson, Higgins, Watson. So considering Higgins is quite literally your number 4 wide receiver, or at very best your number 3, you'll have to play him in the absence of Devontae Smith this week and the following week. But then after that, of course, Higgins will take the backseat in comparison to the rest of your potential options there. I'd only ever be willing to make this kind of a move if I had elite level talent behind Moss and Kincaid. If I'm trading away Kincaid, I better have legitimately, I better have Bowers, Ferguson, Kelsey, Laporta. I better have the cream of the crop, the best players at the position. If I don't, I'm not moving that. Additionally, giving away Higgins and a starting running back of the caliber of Moss, who's getting himself, 16, 17 opportunities per game, that kind of level just for London, I could justify. Again, if you have a stacked roster and you've got 3 or 4 other running backs besides Moss, that really are just going to be your guys rest of the season, and never would you play Moss unless a huge injury was to take place. Typically, I like to keep depth, but I wouldn't mind the second trade again if your current roster allows for it. Otherwise, hold as is and just let Higgins, of course, continue to build upon his performance. It was only his first week off of the injury. Thank you again. Appreciate it, Eric. We have Chief, who sends in a question. Says, in a half PPR, start Jerome Ford or Allen? Between Jerome Ford and Braylon Allen, I do have Jerome Ford ahead of him. So I would probably lean in that direction. Braylon Allen, again, he is still going to be the second fiddle, but he could very easily have himself just as many touches as Jerome Ford. But considering Jerome Ford, if I'm not mistaken, when he did pop up in the injury report Wednesday, yesterday he had a limited participation. Let me see where he was at earlier today. As of earlier today, he did have a full participation, so we're going to lean in his direction as the clear number one back of that offense. And yeah, he definitely is going to have himself probably a good volume of receiving upside within the upcoming week, considering all the offensive line injuries that they have gone ahead and accrued over the first couple weeks here. Thank you for the question, Chief. Michael Barton sends in a question. Thank you, Michael. Michael says, start Juwan Jennings without Deebo Samuel. Okay, so under the assumption that he's out, okay, or play Michael Wilson instead. If Deebo Samuel is out, I would absolutely play Juwan Jennings. The only situation in which we do the alternative would be, of course, if Deebo Samuel is going to suit up. Now, there's nothing that 100% guarantees that Deebo Samuel suits up and isn't decoy Samuel. Yes, that is the term that I have coined and phrased as of last season. There are some games over the course of a year that Kyle Shanahan ignores Deebo within the overall, game script. He may become decoy Samuel in this circumstance, but again, if he's active, we're going to have to lean away from him. Him as in Juwan Jennings. As for your follow-up question, do you think A.J. Brown will play? I thought it was a promising sign that he was warming up with the team today, enough to where, considering, again, they're missing Devontae Smith, I think he would push it to try to play. I'm going to play him if he's if he is active, he is in my starting lineup, without a doubt in my mind. Now, is there a potential in terms of a re-injury or anything of that nature? Absolutely, which does scare me. But again, if he's active, he's in my starting lineup. Now, as for your upcoming other question, would you play J.K. Dobbins? Also, Josh Allen, Shakir, Stack. Okay, so here's the thing. J.K. Dobbins is so much so dependent on the health of the rest of the team. If there's no Herbert, if there's no Joe Alt, I'd probably have him as like my number 27 ranked running back. So he's going to drop at least 4 or 5 spots if we're starting to see players, not in the lineup. If in fact we're in a situation where Herbert doesn't even play, I'm not playing J.K. Dobbins. He'll be like my number 32 ranked running back. It's not going to even be a conversation there. So as of right now, that'll take place. Outside of that, also Josh Allen, Shakir Stack, it should be good to go rest of the season. Caden Wiltz sends in a question. Says, I traded Daniels for London when I have KM1, Kyler Murray. Yeah, fantastic. I love it. Again, you don't need to have two quarterbacks of that caliber. You can easily roll with one for the remainder of the season and find an abundance of success. So in this circumstance, you get London, who is trending again in the right direction as of late, and should be a top 15 wide receiver, if not better, for the remainder of the season. Well done, Caden. Spencer P sends in a question. Says, PPR, Akers, Mostert, Roschon Johnson, or Justice Hill. So if Mixon plays, you cannot play Akers. So then that would lead you in the direction of either playing Mostert, Roschon Johnson, and Justice Hill. Now, of those available, let me just confirm something. Week 4 NFL. I want to know when the Texans play so that I can kind of strategize. Okay, so the Texans play at 10 a.m. PST on Sunday morning. So we will know before Sunday morning's games kick off whether or not Mixon is going to be available for the game. So if in fact he is not, you would play Akers. If in fact Mixon does end up playing and suiting up, you would then pivot to playing Roschon Johnson out of the group. Thank you. Moving on to a question that comes in from Ibrahim. Thank you, Ibrahim. Says, half PPR, I traded Devontae Adams and Singletary for Evans and T. Higgins. I don't have an issue with it. I think Evans and Devontae Adams have very similar value rest of the season. Again, there were, if anything, look, Evans outproduced Devontae Adams last season. Devontae Adams continues to have, besides injuries, shaky quarterback situation in comparison to Evans. So Evans, of course, we're continuing to favor him in that overall conversation, especially in a half PPR. As for T. Higgins, Singletary, very much so dependent on what you need as a roster. And if you need the wide receiver depth, I have no issue with it at all. Thank you, Ibrahim. Paul sends in a question. Paul Byerbent. Let me see if I can find your question. There wasn't anything attached to it. So let's go ahead and Control F. Paul Byer. Paul, do me a favor, if you can, because all I see is an upset, steaming red tomato emoji. Do me a favor and type in the live chat. Let me see if I can find your. Yeah, there's nothing in the live chat, but if you could do me a favor and type, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thanks, man. All right. After we have covered that. Let's go back and let's go to the next question. Ramiz sends in a question, says in a 12-team full PPR, should I start Shakir, BTJ, or Deontay Johnson? Yeah, it's for sure without a doubt Deontay Johnson. The order in which I would start these potential players are Deontay number 1, Shakir number 2, and BTJ number 3. Just based on volume of opportunity that they're going to be exposed to, Deontay Johnson is going to lead the pack. And honestly, he has the easiest matchup out of the group, in my opinion, based on how this is all going to shake down. And also doesn't really have to compete for very many targets with the absence of Adam Thielen. He is still clearing away the number 1 ahead of Leggett, ahead of Mingo. And really, there's already a comfortability and there's already a rapport built in there with Andy Dalton based on that last week's performance. So Deontay's for sure to play. Thank you, Ramiz. All right, let's see here. Let me go to the live chat, see if Paul Byer, there you go, says traded Hubbard and Jennings for Evans. Thoughts? Beautiful. Listen, that is what I'm talking about. You're able to, okay, listen. I don't want you guys to go out there and be terrible league mates to one another. I don't want that. But if your league mates are going to play it stupid and they're going to make mistakes, you need to make them pay for it, right? Because the whole point is we want to win. Are we going to do some slimy things to win? Perhaps. But in this circumstance, they got the players that they technically wanted. Do those players have a ticking time bomb attached to them? Absolutely. Debo could play this week. Next week, Jonathan Brooks returns. So you made an incredible trade. Well done, Paul. All right, moving on to the next question. Yes, sometimes we got to play it slimy. Sometimes we've got to make trades that, again, some people can't help themselves. They make terrible decisions, and we're gonna attach ourselves to the potential of benefiting from those terrible decisions. Nathan Dennison sends in a question. Thank you, Nathan. Says, help me. I'm 0-3. My running backs are Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Jerome Ford, Nick Chubb, and Joe Mixon. My wide receivers consist of Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra, Flowers, Nakua, Jameson Williams, and Khalil Shakir. My tight end is McBride. I got offered Goddard and James Conner for McBride and Nakua. No, I don't. Nah, I'm cool. I'd keep what you have. I understand you're 0-3. In this circumstance, getting Goddard, he's really just going to be like he's a great play this week. But outside of that, once you get the return of Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, we saw it from weeks 1 through 2. Goddard is really he's the 4th receiving option on this team, behind, of course, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley. And considering they have a mobile quarterback, he really, in a great running game, he is very much so only when desperate times call for desperate measures, they're going to utilize Goddard in that kind of capacity. So going forward, I would probably keep what you have. Try to pick up an option off of the waiver, perhaps a Tyler Conklin, perhaps a Dalton Schultz, Zach Ertz off of the waiver wire. Maybe Mike Gesicki is still available. Play him instead in the absence of McBride due to the concussion protocol, but I wouldn't be making that kind of a trade. I think you'd be giving up too much. The potential of Nakua rest of the season is just so highly valuable, especially when you have Chase, Amon-Ra already on this roster. I'd be willing to give like Flowers with it, but I'm not going to give Nakua because really the long-term game, I think for your team, it relies upon him coming back and either being used as a trade piece or as a primary starter. Thank you. Moving on to Ben Pierce, who says the following. In a full PPR, flexes, pick 3 between Rachaad White, Jerome Ford, BTJ, Scary Terry, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Juwan Jennings, and Odunze. Got it. Thank you. Okay, so with all this taken into consideration, of the available players you have, if we're going to be in a situation where if in fact Deebo Samuel is inactive, the 3 that I would play is Garrett Wilson, Drake London, and Juwan Jennings. Now, if in fact Deebo Samuel is in fact going to play on Sunday against the New England Patriots, okay, this is very much so dependent on when they play and when they suit up. So let me check NFL Week 4. Okay, so I just need to confirm this so we're on the same page. Okay, so here's the issue. The Patriots and the 49ers on Sunday play at 1:05 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so 4 p.m. Eastern. So if, in fact, you have another player that plays alongside... Okay, so the only other games at 1 p.m. are Cardinals, Commanders, Chargers, Chiefs, Browns, Raiders, Bills, and Ravens, and then, of course, the 2 Monday games. So considering we may not know whether or not Deebo is active until like maybe an hour before the game, you're kind of in a position where, unfortunately, you are being forced to kind of, oh, no, you're good. Okay, no, never mind. Let me redact that statement. This is the way we're going about it, Ben Pierce. London and Garrett Wilson are your 1 and 2. If, in fact, by the 1 p.m. game time, if Deebo Samuel is deemed out, you play Jennings. If he is deemed to play, you play Scary Terry instead. You're good to go there, Ben. Thank you. Stephen Drake sends in a question, says, sup, Drew? 1, would you flex, okay, who would you flex Hubbard, Ford, and Walker or Jennings. Okay, so when you put out these two options, who would you flex bettered? I don't even know what that means. Hubbard, Ford, and Walker Jennings. I don't even like. Are we versing each other, or do we have four potential options? If we have four potential options, I'm playing Hubbard, and in the absence of Debo, I'm playing Jennings. If Jennings is not, benefiting from the absence of Debo, we're playing Walker and Hubbard. As for your second question, who would you flex between Ford, Akers, and Charbonnet if Walker sits? If, in fact, we're in a situation in which Walker sits, I would play Charbonnet out of the group. Thank you. Pokemon sends in a question. Says if AJB plays, full PPR, pick 3. Pickens, Marvin Harrison, Terry, and AJ Bree. Okay, so as of Sunday morning, the Buccaneers take on the Eagles at 10 a.m. So we'll know while I'm live streaming on Sunday morning whether or not we're going to have an active AJ Brown. So that is definitely beneficial. If, in fact, he does end up playing and he's active, he's going to be a starting wide receiver for your team. He will play alongside of Marvin Harrison and George Pickens. Those would be the 3 that I select. Obviously, if, in fact, he's inactive, then you know the answer. Pickens, Marvin Harrison, and Terry. Thank you, Pokemon. Chris Vasquez sends in a question. Thank you, Chris. Says in a half PPR format, Dalton Kincaid or Dallas Goedert. I mean, I think it's pretty simple. I think regardless of whether or not AJ Brown suits up, I'm still firing up Dallas Goedert. Again, it's just too easy of a potential week for him to get a high volume of targets. The way that it works for the Buffalo Bills and how it was demonstrated once again on Monday Night Football against the Jacksonville Jaguars and continues to reaffirm our take in this circumstance. There is not a single player on that team outside of Josh Allen and James Cook that need to succeed every week in order for them to win games. So they don't really need to force funnel the ball in the direction of Dalton Kincaid. Does he have an incredible matchup? Absolutely. But in comparison to the Eagles and due to all the injuries that they have had on their team, they need to have Dallas Goedert perform well, and he needs to be given a high volume of opportunity for them to move the ball through the air. Outside of that, I mean, they're throwing the ball to Jahan Dotson, which again has not looked great thus far this season. So in this circumstance, I'm leaning towards Dallas Goedert. He'd be my number 1. I think Dalton Kincaid's still in my top 3 tight end options rest of the week, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, you've got 2 decisions to make, or you got 1 decision to make with 2 great options. I don't think there's a wrong answer, but I prefer Goddard in this circumstance. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Crispy sends in a question. I don't see anything attached to it, Crispy, but let me see if I can find it in the live chat. All right. Is that the right Crispy or is that the wrong one? Because I know yesterday there was a Crispy that had that spelt it a little bit differently. So let me just scroll up. Yeah, this is a different Crispy. Okay, very well. So let's go to the live chat. Let's see where you're at. Okay, Crispy says full PPR by the way, and that's it. That's all I see. Crispy, whatever message you originally attached to your super chat that it just didn't go through, it's not attached to it. At least on my screen, it's not. So do me a favor and type in the live chat, and I'll be able to answer your question. I already know that the format is full PPR. Just go ahead and copy paste it, and we're good to go. Thank you, Crispy. Appreciate that. All right, continue on with answering questions until we get to Crispy's response. We have Michael Tamayo. Thank you very much, Michael. Says start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers in a flex, and 1 tight end. We have Chuba, Jacobs, Najee Harris, Rice, Garrett, Ayuk, McLaurin, Komet, Freiermuth. Appreciate it, this man. No problem. Okay, so of the available that we have here, Rashee Rice automatically always has to play. So Rashee Rice and Ayuk would be the 2 wide receivers that I'm rolling with. As for the 2 running backs, I mean, you really just have a couple options available to you. I prefer Chuba Hubbard and Najee Harris as that 1-2 combo. I probably end up, out of the available options that you have, flexing Jacobs, and then tight end between Freiermuth and Komet, I would go with Komet. So let's recap this. Starting running backs, Chuba Hubbard, Najee Harris. Starting wide receivers, Rice and Ayuk. Starting flex, Jacobs. Starting tight end, Komet. Thank you very much, Michael. Now that we've done that, let's go back to see if Crispy typed in the live chat. I'm assuming they must have. Crispy says, hi, Andrew. Hope all is well with you. It is. Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm starting Jaden Reed and Deontay Johnson this week as my wide receivers. My running backs are Aaron Jones and Devon Achane. Should I start Montgomery or Tyreek Hill in the flex? Okay, great question. So considering we are still not privy to the information as to who's starting at quarterback for, okay, this is going to be my suggestion. We don't know the information as to who's going to start at quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. So this would be my suggestion as of right now. I'd probably be put in a situation to where I probably play Montgomery ahead of Achane as your starting running back. So theoretically this week, you'd have Jaden Reed, Deontay Johnson, along with Montgomery and Aaron Jones. And then on Monday, depending on who's announced as the starting quarterback, that would kind of determine as to who you start at flex. You would then kind of pivot either playing Achane, assuming it's, let's say, Skylar Thompson plays, you're going to play Achane because, again, we know he's not going to be able to throw the ball 20 yards down the field. If it is Tyler Huntley, then you play Tyreek Hill there and you hope for a big bomb over the top of the opposing defense. I think that's probably the safest way of going about it. Now, if you are put in a situation, Crispy, in which this week there is no confirmation and we get to Sunday and we do not have Jordan Love starting for the Green Bay Packers, then at that point, you're playing Tyreek Hill regardless of quarterback situation alongside of Deontay Johnson, and then you're just going to flex Montgomery. Thank you, Crispy. Hopefully all that makes sense. If it didn't make sense, rewind it. I promise you it'll make sense. All right, let's go back to answering some of these questions. All right, so after Michael Tamayo, we had Pokemon again, who follows up and says, would you play Conklin over Andrews this week? I have them very closely ranked. As of right now, let me open up my Patreon rankings and let me just see where I have them referenced as to this point. So as of Thursday's rankings, I had Mark Andrews as my number 12 and Conklin as my number 13. I have them both in the same tier, so they're both tier 5 tight ends as of this current moment in time. So based on the tier factor, theoretically, you can start one over the other, and I wouldn't be bothered by it. So if you want to play Tyler Conklin over Mark Andrews, give Mark Andrews another week, go for it. Now, if it's my roster, I'm playing Mark Andrews, and I'm biting the bullet in this circumstance against the Buffalo Bills, because again, we know taking on the Buffalo Bills, it is going to force Lamar Jackson and this offense to have to throw the ball far more than they typically do. When they are in negative game scripts, they throw the ball about 8 or 9 more times per game on average in comparison to prior weeks in which they're ahead and running the clock out with the running game, Lamar and Derrick Henry implicated. So there would be a lot more potential opportunities for Mark Andrews to be a relevant option in this circumstance, and I'd lean in that direction if it was my team. Z-Hans sends in a question. Thank you, Z-Hans. Says, in a half PPR, I need to start 3. Planned on McLaurin and Deontay Johnson. Third options are potentially Leggett, Michael Wilson Jr., Lockett, Jennings. Thoughts based on Debo playing. Yeah, so look, if in fact Debo Samuel does end up playing and there's no setback and there's nothing of that nature, Juwan Jennings cannot play for you. And at that point, I would then pivot to most likely either playing Michael Wilson or Tyler Lockett. Between the two of them, considering there are so many weapons already in that offense for the Seattle Seahawks, you already have DK Metcalf, you already have JSN who are going to vie for targets within that given game. Considering that is the case, I'd probably lean towards playing Michael Wilson over Lockett. But again, if in fact Debo does not play, I play Jennings over the bunch. Thank you. 7th Season sends in a question. 7th Season. Brother, you're part of Patreon. Aren't you? Just shoot me a message and we're good to go. But hey, I appreciate it. Again, you're asking me questions that again, by Sunday morning, you'd have the rankings, you'd be good to go. But I appreciate the support regardless. Thank you, 7th Season. Says half PPR, Worthy, Michael, Jacoby. Okay, so between the three of them, if I'm gonna rank it going into this upcoming weekend, Jacoby Myers would be number 1, Michael Wilson would be number 2, and Xavier Worthy would be number 3. As for your follow-up question, also dropped Swift for Akers. I wouldn't do that. Again, Akers is only a pickup option if in fact you need to start him this week. Otherwise, his overall value rest of season is unfortunately less than that of Swift in this current capacity. Despite how bad Swift is played, he's still implicated to be in a rotational role within that backfield. In comparison to when Mixon is healthy, Akers is an irrelevant option in the number 3 in that offense, even behind a healthy Dameon Pierce. Thank you, 7th Season. Milo sends in a question, or Milo says, I traded Godwin and Ertz for AJ Brown and Pitts. Yeah, cool, perfect, fantastic, love it. Again, anytime you can trade for a better wide receiver is perfect. As for Ertz and Pitts, technically, you also traded for a better tight end, but otherwise, I thought that was going to be trade fodder regardless. It doesn't matter to me who out of those 2 tight ends performs better rest of the season. The fact of the matter is I prefer A.J. Brown over Godwin. I say well done. Shane Howard sends in a question, says, hey, Andrew, who to flex, Harris, Mooney, or Leggett? I think it depends on scoring format. Shane, can you do me a favor and let me know in the comment section or just the live chat what your scoring format is? Let me see if you may have typed something in the chat. Nothing. Yeah. Let me know what your scoring format is. At that point, I can get a little bit of a greater grasp on as to how we want to approach it for this given week. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. After that, we had Inderjit with 2 questions back to back. The first one goes, what are some players who would trade Chris Godwin for? I mean, if you can get AJ Brown, we do that, right? Look, here's the thing about Chris Godwin at this current moment. His value is really high, and it's not fugazi. It's not like this is an unsustainable value of him. No, he's a great receiver. He just lacked opportunity last season. And the biggest thing for Chris Godwin over the course of 2022 and 2023 was purely that he wasn't scoring touchdowns. I mean, in 2022, I think he scored 3 touchdowns. Last season, he scored 2 touchdowns altogether. He's already scored just as many more, I mean, if not more touchdowns this season already. So what he is being implicated for, the volume at which they're utilizing him, is not something that's going to disappear. I don't think he is a sell-high candidate in this circumstance. Sure, there are going to be weeks in which maybe he doesn't have as great of a performance in which he has done in comparison to what he has done as of late, because he doesn't score a touchdown or something of that exchange. But I mean, look, if you're going to trade Godwin at this moment, you have to trade him for high tier value. Like I'm legitimately like, if you're going to trade Godwin, you better get Marvin Harrison Jr. back. You better get AJ Brown's back. You better get actual top tier talent at the position back. Like I'd be willing to, I mean, like if I'm comparing him with Devontae Smith, I think they're identical value. I think both of them are going to be very much so in line for similar levels of production and opportunity going forward. But if you can somehow get top tier Amon-Ra's away from people, then you would do it. I'm not trading for injured players. I'm not going to trade for Puka. I'm not going to trade for Kupp at the moment. Again, I don't want to have to deal with 4 weeks of an injury. I'd consider trading him to try to get Tyreek Hill, but that's again very much so dependent on how your team's constructed and how you really look at the risk factor of that move. It could end up biting you in the ass, but outside of that, unless you're going to get Nico Collins, Jefferson, unless you're going to get a top tier player, you're holding. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. As for your follow-up there, Interjet, we had Clyde Edwards will be this year's Kyron. Listen, we've seen, okay, here's the difference, right? Kyron Williams last season came out of nowhere, literally, because the years prior, barely played. We have seen Clyde Edwards-Helaire play football. It leaves us begging for more. That's just what I'll say. We have enough tape on Clyde Edwards to know what kind of player he is. And quite frankly, we know from past experience, Andy Reid just doesn't trust him. There's a reason why they drafted Pacheco and gave Pacheco the job. First and foremost, Clyde Edwards can't stay healthy. Second of all, he's not the better of the two backs. And could he have value going forward? Absolutely. But they wouldn't have brought back Kareem Hunt unless they knew that, of course, they needed him. All right, let me get to Shane Howard's question in the live chat. Let me see. Hopefully he typed it out. Or not question, but more like the format. PPR, Andrew. Sorry, no problem, Shane. Okay, so in this circumstance here, in a full PPR scoring format, you have the following. Let me scroll back up here. Harris, Mooney, or Leggett. I'm not going to play Leggett in that scenario. I think you've got far too better. Yeah, I mean, the alternative options you have are just significantly better. So it's just a matter of like, do we want to play Mooney in hopes that maybe he ends up having himself a touchdown? Let's say, for example, we're going to play Mooney and he doesn't score a touchdown. In this circumstance, in a full PPR, he probably ends up putting up like 14 points, I'd have to guess. Yeah, so the last 2 weeks, he's at 17.8 and 14.6. Najee Harris would need to score a touchdown in a scenario in which he's able to be equivalent to the value of Darnell Mooney in this circumstance, because we know that Darnell Mooney's usage is not going to disappear in a given week as often as the potential of, I guess when you compare him to Kyle Pitts kind of just maybe a couple weeks he'll score, but ultimately Mooney's the number 2. So yeah, at this point, I just play Mooney. In a full PPR, I'd rather just get the guaranteed receptions that are just racking in points. And if he scores a touchdown, it's not going to be close. Harris will have a really tough time trying to catch up to him. If you could guarantee me that Harris is going to, score a touchdown and have 4 receptions, then it wouldn't, at that point, I'd be all in on the Harris factor. But considering Justin Fields, the rushing mobility, all that kind of jazz, it makes it a tougher start in this circumstance. I'd go with Mooney. Interjit has, okay, so we took care of Interjit's questions. Thank you again, Shane Howard. We have KB. He says, sup, Andrew? I'm 3-0, full PPR. Was offered Connor and Tank Dell for Mason and BTJ. Yeah, I'll take it. I have Nico Collins. Feel like Tank is depth if Nico and Stephon Diggs go down. Benson is on the waivers too. Yeah, I take it. Listen, I'm always trying to cash in on Jordan Mason if, in fact, I do not have Christian McCaffrey on roster. Cashing Mason in for Connor is beautiful. Getting Tank Dell, again, I do prefer him over BTJ rest of the season, so we're good to go in that circumstance. Thank you. As for your follow-up, KB says, also, I have Saquon, Jonathan Taylor, Chuba, and Brooks. I mean, at this point, again, Saquon, Jonathan Taylor, and Connor are going to be your top 3. As for Chuba and Brooks, I guess you can trade away Chuba right now if you can potentially high, and then just hold Brooks for actually, technically, considering Saquon goes on bye next week, we might not want to preemptively trade Chuba away yet, but again, I think it's a great trade to make. Thank you. Romeo sends in a question, says, in a half PPR, traded Keenan Allen and Rico Dowdle for Waddle. Thoughts? Yeah, again, very much so dependent on the quarterback production that we're going to see, whether it is Tyler Huntley, whether it is Tim Boyle, whether it is Skylar Thompson, time will tell. Whether or not Tua comes back is certainly going to play a factor. If in fact we're going to be in a situation in which it is Tyler Huntley, I think that definitely helps benefit the potential for upside for Jalen Waddle. He'd be back in my top 36 wide receiver ranking going into this week. But again, there's nothing that guarantees that Huntley's going to be able to deliver the ball to him on a consistent basis. Again, Huntley is a guy that was on the practice squad of the Baltimore Ravens. He is not a starting or a back. He's not Joe Flacco. Like, they need Joe Flacco, but they don't have him. So in this overall circumstance, you didn't have to give up too much per se, but it's risky in its own right. But hey, listen, let's hope let's hope it pans out. Let's hope that Tua comes back in week 8 and get you back on track. Juice Fino sends in a question, says, "Sup, Andrew? Would you start Xavier Legette, Michael Wilson, or Lazard over Rachaad White in a full PPR?" Yeah, I think I'd start Michael Wilson over Rachaad White. The thing about Rachaad White is that, again, if he's going to get his rushing attempts siphoned, and eventually, if they get down to the goal line, if he gets red zone rushing opportunities siphoned from him, effectively, his overall upside in that circumstance is evaporated. And if they're going to be in a positive game script going against the Philadelphia Eagles, his potential for getting like a 7-reception game is far less likely than it typically is in those negative game scripts that they like to play in. So in this circumstance, yeah, I don't mind the idea of playing Michael Wilson there. If I could get a guarantee that, of course, Rachaad White would still have all that, goal line opportunities and all those upside, rushing attempts and be efficient with them, I'd be cool playing them. But in this circumstance, it's really tough to trust them as of late. Thank you, Juice. Paul Adams says, "I joined Patreon. How do I connect with you? Also, how do I join Discord?" Okay, so if you join the Patreon, I'm going to kind of try to explain it the best I can. If you go to the homepage of my Patreon, once you've signed up, okay, the pinned post, when you scroll down, says, "Welcome to 2024 fantasy football season." If you read that, it'll describe exactly how to message me. And then once you can message me, because there's the way that you message me, in the top right corner of the screen, there is a little envelope it's like a little message envelope. If you click on that, you can shoot me a straight message. That's how you guys ask me questions at an unlimited basis. So if you send me a message there, ask whatever questions you'd like, but also include your Discord name, and then I can go ahead and shoot you a friend request and then add you to the private server. And then, of course, if you want to send me screenshots of your team and all that kind of jazz so we can talk about trades or start and sits, then we can cover that. Thank you for the support, Paul. Appreciate that. Moving on to Mr. Meeks, who says, "In a full PPR, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, Christian McCaffrey, ETN, Rachaad White, Akers, Devontae Adams, DJ Moore, Jamison Williams, Juwan Jennings, Shakir Pickens. Who do I start?" Okay, so of the available options that we have here, we need 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. Now, you mentioned a lot of players here. I don't know how many running backs you can start. So can you do me a favor, Mr. Meeks? Type in the live chat. Is it only literally just 2 wide receivers and 1 flex? And we have all those options? Or are we also starting running backs amongst those options that are available? Let me know. Thank you. While we wait for Mr. Meeks to send that in, we have Robert Goodell who sends in a question. And I got to figure out where that message went. So let me go ahead and see what's going on here. Let's close that. Okay, Robert Goodell. And then we had Crispy with another one. Crispy. Okay, very well. So let's go one at a time. Let's see if Robert typed his message in the live chat. If he did, then we'll be off and away here until we get back to Mr. Meeks. Robert says, "In a full PPR 12-team league, I needed to pick 2 out of the following options: Shaheed, BTJ, Jennings, Worthy, Akers." Okay, so in a full PPR format, Robert, if we're in a situation okay, hold up. Let's think about this really quickly, because you have a little bit of a tough situation. Everybody who has Jennings is going to be in a tough situation because, again, he plays at 1 p.m. PST on Sunday. So unless you have an option that's also in that late window of Sunday, you might have to either risk it for the biscuit or have an alternative pivoting option available. So of what you have available, you have Akers, BTJ, Worthy, and Shaheed. Okay, so here's my suggestion as it currently stands. The way that you would go about playing it this week is you'd play Shaheed as your number 1 wide receiver out of the group, and he's good to go. He's great to play, especially considering Olave's injury. Then you would want to play Jennings. Now, if in fact we're in a situation, Robert, in which Deebo Samuel is activated on Sunday afternoon, then you would pivot to playing Worthy, and then you would continue on as such. If Deebo is inactive, then you continue on with keeping Jennings in your lineup. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it. All right, let's go to Crispy. Let's see if there's another question from Crispy. Okay, Crispy says, same Crispy from yesterday. LOL, changed my name after you pointed out the spelling error. Sending code. Okay, dude. I can't. That is incredible. Okay, thank you very much. You made my life easier, at least. It looks like Keenan Allen is on track to play. I have McBride, but he's out. Okay, very well. Cole Kmet or Tyler Conklin this week. I'm leaning towards Conklin if Keenan Allen is out. I saw a Hidden Gems video. Yeah, great stuff. Okay, appreciate it. So, can I justify playing Conklin over Kmet even with the incredible matchup? Yeah, if Keenan Allen's in, which again, the uncertainty of not knowing makes it difficult. Let me see. When did they play? Did they play Sunday morning? They do play on Sunday morning in Chicago. So we'll know by that point. If he's active and Rome Odunze's active and everybody's going to be active, it will lower the value of Kmet to the extent to where, yeah, I wouldn't mind playing Conklin over him. Crispy, thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you for changing your name, making my life easier, every day. Appreciate it. Okay, so continuing on. Let's see if Mr. Meeks wanted to go ahead and type in the live chat. Mr. Meeks, hopefully you're there. Mr. Meeks says 2 running backs. Thank you, Mr. Meeks. Appreciate that. All right. Now that we've gone ahead and taken care of that, let's go ahead and let's scroll back up and let's answer this question. So of the available that you have here, Christian McCaffrey obviously is on the IR, but your best available running backs in this circumstance are probably, under the assumption, of course, under the assumption that Mixon is out on Sunday morning, you'd play ETN alongside of Akers. Okay, so those are the 2 that you would play. If Mixon is in, you'd play ETN and Rashad White. Boom. Those are your running backs. Those are the stipulations. Those are the contingency plans. As for wide receiver, considering Devontae Adams is out, your best available options of the following are DJ Moore, Jamison Williams, Juwan Jennings, Shakir, Pickens, etc. So of those available options, my favorites, if I'm going to play 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers in a flex, I'm going to play DJ Moore alongside of Pickens. And if in fact Debo is inactive, Juwan Jennings. If in fact Debo is active, we would bench Juwan Jennings and play Jamison Williams for Monday night. Okay, so those are also the contingencies and the starts for that given game. Thank you, Mr. Meeks. All right, we move on to God's Gang, who says, if Olave plays, are we playing him over Higgins? I really love it. Yeah, I would play him over Higgins. Now, if you really like the matchup of Higgins taking on the Carolina Panthers, which again, I don't mind it either. He's a top 30 option in this circumstance. But if you prefer it greatly, then you can roll with that. I don't have an issue with it. At this point, though, Olave is very much so contingent on, like, he's got to be 100%. They'd have to give me, like, there's no doubt that he's going to re-injure himself. Because if he re-injures himself, I could literally kill my whole week if I play him. And he ends up getting 4 points and then leaves the game at halftime, So we'll have to keep that monitor for tomorrow morning. But if he plays, he's probably in my lineup, considering how, honestly, I think it's a great play against Atlanta. As for the follow-up, Murray over Jaden Daniels, either one should be nice. Yeah, either one's nice. Whichever one you want to play, you go for. I just like the fact that the Arizona Cardinals have a great matchup against Washington secondary that gives up the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, and additionally go up the most fantasy points per game in terms of passing statistics to quarterbacks. So I just slightly prefer that in this circumstance. If Jaden Daniels scores a rushing touchdown, it could be a little bit of a different outcome as to who scores more. But again, there's no wrong answer between the two. Thank you. Tony Dangle sends in a question, says, in a full PPR, start 2, Deontay Johnson, Zach Moss, T. Higgins. I think it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to play Zach Moss and Deontay Johnson there. Thank you, Tony. Jeremy Melendez sends in a question, says, flex Swift, Leggett, Lockett, or Braylon Allen in a full PPR. Out of those available options, I'm going to start Lockett. Thank you. Moving on to a question that comes in from Julian. Thank you, Julian. It says, I'm 1-3 in a full PPR. I have Jamar Chase, Zay Flowers, Jacobs. Okay, this is not even a matter of what you have. It's a matter of a trade. Jamar Chase, Zay Flowers, and Jacobs for Breece Hall and Olave. I'd much rather, it's not even close, have Flowers, Jamar, and Jacobs the rest of the season. Much rather. It's not even close. As for your follow-up question, my wide receivers would be Olave, London, JS. Yeah, I'm not interested there. I'd rather have Jamar, Flowers, and Jacobs. Thank you. If you want to make that deal, again, do it on your own prerogative. You are the final decision maker of your team, but I don't find much interest in that circumstance. Nathan Salazar sends in a question, says, Olave is questionable. Full PPR. Do I start Garrett Wilson with a tough matchup or Michael Wilson or Leggett? Okay, let's say, for example, Olave is out. We will know by Sunday morning, considering they start 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time against the Falcons in Atlanta. So we'll know whether or not he's going to be active. If he's active, you're going to play him. Now, if in fact he is not, in this circumstance, yes, I would still play Garrett Wilson over the alternative options of Michael Wilson and Leggett. I know that they're hidden gems. Listen, not every single hidden gem is going to put up 41 points like Juwan Johnson last week, right? It's very much so, very seldom do those kind of experiences happen. Do they happen? Sure, but I wasn't anticipating that. So going forward, I'd still probably go with Garrett Wilson in this situation. Thoughts on Jonathan Brooks when he comes back? Should be able to take over the backfield pretty quickly. Mainly because, again, the way that this organization has worked and the way that they've already gone ahead and made decisions, they prefer their guys. They prefer the guys that they drafted. And again, by benching Bryce Young, they're pretty much telling the whole team, we want to play our guys and we want to win games now. And whoever's going to help us do that will will take the priority. And if Jonathan Brooks comes back and looks great, he's able to transition to the offense beautifully. I mean, again, they should utilize him just in the same way in which they utilized Rachaad White last year, as Dave Canales was the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Bucks. Thank you. Moving on to Z-Hands, who has a follow-up. Says, based on previous question, play Michael Wilson over Kenneth Walker. Okay. So I'm assuming that game is going to be a shootout. But that being said, Kenneth Walker probably finishes the game with like 45 rushing yards and maybe a couple receptions. If he gets himself a rushing touchdown, he's going to be of value. So if we're going to compare it, based on what I've seen running backs produce against Detroit as to what the potential of a Michael Wilson could look like, it's probably Michael Wilson who gets the start. Especially considering it's the first week with Kenneth Walker back. He'd probably still get some of his touches taken by Charbonnet to the extent to where it's uncomfortable, and we just rather prefer to play a PPR wide receiver. Thank you, Z-Hands. Don Ray sends in a question. Thank you, Don Ray. Says, in a half PPR, play Gesicki or Kittle in week 4. I'd absolutely play Kittle. Absolutely. He was clear ready to go. If I'm not mistaken, let me see here. 49ers injury report. Let me go ahead and pull this up right now. So as of earlier today, George Kittle, full practice participant on Friday, good to go, no questions asked, and is going to be fired up. Last week, of course, Tyler Conklin, 5 catches for 93. George Kittle should be in, a great situation to potentially be a top 5 tight end within the week and hopefully find himself in the end zone. Is Jahan Dotson a go? No, I'm not playing Jahan Dotson. I'd have to be in a really desperate situation to fire up Jahan Dotson. Even if A.J. Brown doesn't play tomorrow, I'm not going to have Jahan Dotson in my top 45. I won't do it. I can't. It's just too risky. I don't think he's a good enough wide receiver to be able to take on like Marshawn Lattimore coverage, honestly. Bearcat sends in a question. And watch, I said that. Clip it out. He scores 3 touchdowns on Sunday morning. Bearcat sends in a question and says, would you play Bowers over Rachaad White in a flex? If it's a full PPR, yes. Thank you. Lamosity says, half PPR offered Rachaad White and Flowers for Stevenson and McLaurin. I currently have Stevenson and McLaurin. I'd keep Stevenson and McLaurin. The situation of Rachaad White does scare me enough to where I do prefer. Yeah, the situation of Rachaad White it's not optimal. I'd rather just have Stevenson rest the season, and I would hope that McLaurin can keep up with Flowers, which I don't know if it's possible, but I would hope that that's a possibility, going forward. As for the rest of your question, says, I currently run Stevenson, McLaurin, or Deontay. As of right now, Stevenson or Deontay at the flex. So if you're going to start one of those 3 in the flex, it's Deontay Johnson this weekend. But yeah, that's the way I see it as of right now. Rachaad White would need a lot of help. He would need Bucky Irving to disappear legitimately for him to get a lot of that value back into his overall system. Fredo sends in a question. Thank you, Freddie. Freddie says, drop Hunt and Njoku for Roschon Johnson and Mostert. Achane manager. Listen, if you have Achane, it's probably... Look, Mostert is going to be that handcuff, theoretically. If you are still in need of another active running back to play in future weeks and start, Hunt is someone that can provide that for you, but so can Roschon Johnson. So if you're in a situation where you just prefer Roschon because of the lack of value from Swift and you want to buy on that lottery ticket, I have no issue with that. Dropping Hunt is not an issue, but dropping Njoku, if you don't have an IR spot available, but you also have another tight end that you're comfortable with rest of season, then I don't mind that overall swap considering you're securing your handcuff in that scenario, Freddie. Thank you. All right, we move on to a question that comes in from Jeremy Lewis, who says, PPR, I was offered Keenan Allen and Rashid Shaheed for DJ Moore and Eckler. If Eckler looks good, man. Eckler, what does he put up? Like in a half PPR, 8, 10, and 12 points so far. So like he's trending in the right direction to be like a top 25 running back this season. Probably like 25, 26 most likely, if I had to guess. If this concussion doesn't take too long here for him to return. If you want the additional wide receiver depth, sure. But if it's me, I prefer DJ Moore over Keenan Allen rest of the season. And Shaheed, as for Shaheed versus Eckler, Shaheed's going to have value remainder of the season. But it's just a matter of like, I need wide receiver depth in comparison to running back depth. That's why I want to have Shaheed. Otherwise, I think their point totals are going to be kind of similar in terms of long-term haul. They'll have similar value. It's just a matter of what position do you need, running back or a wide receiver / flex. Thank you. Sean K says, JSN or Myers this week? Really good question. I probably... It's probably smart to play JSM, but I prefer Myers. Sean K says, drop Pitts for Brooks. I have Kincaid. Sure. If you can't trade Pitts away and you're going to be able to get Brooks for it, because Brooks is going to give you additional starting running back value in future weeks, I think in the long term, it's definitely smart to have on roster in comparison to Kyle Pitts, which again, you're never going to utilize until you have a Kincaid bye week. But by that time, you'll pick somebody else up. So unless you can move him via a trade, I don't mind it. All right, let's see here. Al Taylor says, I can start 2 of these guys at the flex, 8-person half PPR, Worthy, Pickens, Ford, Akers, and Braylon Allen. Okay, so of the group, my favorite is, as of right now, George Pickens. If I was going to suggest another option, it would probably be playing Akers if Mixon is out. If Mixon is not out, you would then play Ford alongside of Pickens. Thank you. We move on to Samuel Walker, who says, PPR, I need 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. We have Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Pickens, Jacobs. Okay, so Jacobs, do I play Jacobs or do I play Tyreek Hill in the flex? I think the way that I go about it is I play Hill, Pickens, and Jacobs, and I bench Wilson. The only reason I'd ever play Wilson over Hill is if, in fact, they tell me Skylar Thompson is playing quarterback before the Sunday games. Thank you, Samuel. Appreciate it. Sean K has a follow-up, says Irving or Charbonnet rest of the season? Irving. Thank you. Awesome person says full PPR. Drop Coleman for Mooney or Addison. Yeah, either of the two. Who do I prefer? As of right now, Mooney's played well, but I think Addison is a really talented player. And quite frankly, the way that Minnesota Vikings offense is functioning leans me in his direction ever so slightly. But both of them are great regardless of who you pick up. We move on to Don Ray, who has a follow-up and says the following. Half PPR flex, Rashad White, Swift, or Shakir. In a half PPR this week, I probably end up playing Khalil Shakir. Number 1, Rashad White 2, Swift number 3. Thank you. Ricardo Rodriguez sends in a question, says, do you see McLaurin rising in your ranks? Looks like he found his connection with J Daniels 5. Okay. Trying to see if I should target him. Nah, I don't. Look, here's the thing. Terry McLaurin had 2 big plays down the field. If Jaden Daniels is going to continue to give him those opportunities, beautiful, right? But the issue is he doesn't have any other production outside of that on a consistent enough basis, right? Like, he's very similar based on what we've seen in week 3 to a Rashid Shaheed. He requires the deep ball in order to find himself effective fantasy value. Now, every couple times a game, he's going to be given those opportunities, but unless they start to get him utilized within, the shorter yard situations and give him a bigger stream of target opportunity, it's going to be tougher to trust him when he doesn't make those big plays. Let's say, he could be given an opportunity, but nothing says that it's not going to lead to a defensive pass interference and 0 points, right? That happens to George Pickens all the effing time. So in this circumstance, I love Jenny Daniels. I'd love for McLaurin to get more opportunity, but I don't see it potentially happening. But time will obviously tell and be the difference maker in this scenario. Also, Burrow or J.D. Daniels in a half PPR. Both of them are top 5 ranked. I prefer J.D. Daniels this week, though. Kendrick sends in a question, says half PPR flex, Chuba Hubbard, Shakir, Bucky Irving. Between the 3 of them in a half PPR, I would say you should play Chuba Hubbard. Thank you. It's Kafka, says trade Flowers and Mooney for Reed. I think Flowers and Reed have very similar value. I think giving up Mooney is very much so like a fodder piece if you just have enough, a wide receivers to be able to live going forward with the upcoming injuries, bye weeks, etc. So if you prefer Reed with the return of Jordan Love over Flowers, I have no issue with it at all because Mooney is just fodder in this scenario. Himmy sends in a question. Let me see if I can find your question, Himmy. Control F. Himmy says the following. Himmy says, traded Flowers for Christian McCaffrey on the hopes that he returns. Even if he doesn't return, I think it's probably the best trade you could have made. My wide receivers are Hill, Neighbors, London. Yeah, you're good, brother. That's a steal. You basically have just bought yourself or your hole punched a ticket that if you make the playoffs and McCaffrey's back, you're making a run for the title. Well done, Himmy. Is there any other question from Himmy? Nothing. All right, thank you. I appreciate that, Himmy. All right, we move on to the next question from Jim Slim92. Thank you, Jim. Jim says, I have Henry, Mason, and Moss at the flex. Very well. Taylor and Ford on the bench. Okay, understand it. Playing matchups. Very well. Taylor versus Pittsburgh and Ford versus the Raiders. Should I change? Okay. I think I'll say it probably. Here's the thing. When there's players that are such elite talents and they have great offensive lines like a Jonathan Taylor, typically and most likely it's against my religion to bench them for an alternative like, for example, Moss. In fact, I would feel so confident to play Taylor over Henry in this scenario. Now, of the available players that you have, Jim, the way that I would rank it if it was my team is Mason number 1, Taylor 2, Henry 3, then Moss 4, then Ford 5. So I feel so confident in Jonathan Taylor this week that I'm willing to start him over Derrick Henry and bench Henry's ass, under the assumption that, again, that's going to be a game in which they're not going to be able to run the ball because they're trying to keep up with Buffalo's offense. Now, I could have the whole situation read wrong, and it could bite you in the ass. So if you want to keep it as such, go for it. Otherwise, it's against my religion to bench Jonathan Taylor for any reason, even matchup. He's a player that defies matchup. That's how talented he is. Jamar Joseph sends in a question. Says, Brooks or Charbonnet rest season? It's not even close. It's Jonathan Brooks. If you can make a trade in which you get him, or you can pick him up off waivers, absolutely get that done, my man. Thank you. Mr. Buffalo Bill sends in a question. Says, full PPR, Deontay, Olave, Shakir, Terry McLaurin, or Evans start 4. Okay, so of those 5 available options, the way that I would see it such is, if in fact we are in a scenario in which Olave is healthy and playing by Sunday morning, the way that I would approach it is playing Olave, Evans, Deontay, and Shakir. If in fact we are in a situation in which Olave is inactive, you would then replace him with Terry McLaurin. Thank you. Big sends in a question. He says, would you drop Kirk for Mooney? Probably not. I think Kirk, again, what he demonstrated on Monday is a lot of what we're going to continue to see. Christian Kirk is a really talented receiver, right? Has this offense looked like absolute dumpster fire material? Absolutely. But I think going forward, in the absence of an Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk is going to be a double-digit target guy. And going up against Houston this week, I think it's a relatively advantageous matchup. And of course, they have a great experience against that defense. Their familiarity with it alone, and the matchup against their slot cornerback is, I mean, usually what the Texans do is they bring down a safety and they put them in the nickel. And their safeties, they're solid in coverage, but I don't think they're going to be able to bottle up Christian Kirk for an overall week here. Now, if you're talking about like, hey, rest of season value, I'm still leaning in the direction of Kirk, even in the return of Evan Ingram. Thank you. Vino Sino says, 14-team full PPR, I need a flex. I have Chase Brown, I have Tyjae Spears, Michael Pittman Jr., or Watson, if Love plays. Okay, so in this scenario, full PPR, I don't want to play Michael Pittman Jr. I cannot trust Pittman if I cannot trust the quarterback, right? This is the exact situation that we had this offseason with Malik Neighbors, and why Malik Neighbors wasn't drafted as high as he should have been. Nobody really knew what the potential capabilities of Daniel Jones in the passing game were. Did we know that he could target a wide receiver 15 times per game? No. But he's done it more thus far this season than he's ever done it in his entire career. So, in this scenario, don't trust Pittman because I don't trust Anthony Richardson. Also, it's Pittsburgh's defense, which again, they're going to bottle up Pittman. Then you have Tyjae Spears, which again, only is going to benefit if he ends up catching the ball 4 times for 40 yards and gets himself 20 rushing yards, right? He can get himself 10 points there. But honestly, if Jordan Love plays, I'm playing Christian Watson. And I'm going for the gamble play because I think Jordan Love elevates his... Look, this is the way that I see it. The Green Bay Packers in the last 2 weeks are so talented and so well coached that they're able to, with a quarterback that has found no success in the NFL, find success and beat teams that they had no business beating because of what they had at quarterback. Yet they implemented the single wing offense and they absolutely battered teams. So with Jordan Love coming back, I'm all in on the idea of playing Watson in this scenario. If Jordan Love does not return, I'm probably leaning in the direction of playing Chase Brown against Carolina because of the matchup. Thank you. Matt Davis sends in a question, says Jacoby Myers or Garrett Wilson this week. Somebody asked this earlier. I think I have to play Garrett Wilson. If you want to play Jacoby Myers, it wouldn't bother me. But I don't feel that. I always have a hard time sitting my studs. And you may think, oh, well, Garrett Wilson's not really a stud, Andrew, and he has to take on X, Y, or Z cornerback. I get it. The assumption would be that there's no way that they allow Garrett Wilson to not move around and get himself into opportune situations. Like, if they're going to leave Garrett Wilson out on an island and let him be covered the whole game, then that's, that offense's prerogative, and maybe they'll go ahead and do it as such. But I would assume that they'd like to move him in the slot, move him around so that he can get away from Patrick Surtain in certain circumstances. If you're worried about it, move to Myers. I don't think it's a bad play. But otherwise, I'm playing Garrett. Thank you. Roy Powell sends in a question. Thank you, Roy. Says, hey, Andrew, I'm 1-2. Feels like I have a good team with Jalen Hurts, Jonathan Taylor, Achane, Henry, Chase Brown, Dowdle. Okay, pretty good running backs, great quarterback. My wide receivers are Marvin Harrison, Jaden Reed. You have Keenan Allen, Higgins, J-Mo. Tight ends are Likely and Njoku. Should I right the ship or trade? I mean, look, at this point, there's no really... I don't think there's a real reason to move any pieces here. Again, Taylor, Achane, Henry is like a criminally powerful team. Like that's some like evil henchman level stuff like you have there. Then you have Marvin Harrison, the return of Reed and Allen to prominence. J-Mo and Higgins are always in the wings. You could end up moving pieces around, but I don't think you need to. If you want a better tight end, you could try to go and trade for one with the services of like a Higgins plus one of your tight ends or J-Mo plus one of your tight ends in order to try to bring something back in return of greater value, a Kincaid, a Ferguson, a Kelsey, a Laporta on a Bilo kind of situation. But ultimately, I think it'd be difficult to do, and I'd probably just tell you to just keep it as is and keep the depth. And as the future weeks go on, bye weeks begin, more injuries take place. Again, you've pretty much avoided injuries. Keenan Allen's the only one hit. Eventually, you'll be hit with some, and when you do, you'll be happy that you had the depth that you currently have. Thank you. John Daughtry sends in a question. Says, full PPR, Montgomery or Chuba Hubbard? Am I crazy for thinking? Are you crazy? No. But am I playing Montgomery? Without a doubt in my mind. Montgomery has to play. He is a top 12. He's a top 8 running back in fantasy in a full PPR right now. The dude's putting up 18 points per game. There's no situation in which I need to bench him. Even with Chuba Hubbard and how great he was last week and how great his overall matchup is, the Detroit Lions just have the best run blocking game in the entire league. And they're going to continue to rely upon it, and they're going to continue to let Montgomery lead this backfield in touches as he has thus far this season. Stephen Drake sends in a follow-up, says, do you like Miami's defense this week? I don't mind Miami's defense. Do I love them? No. But as it currently stands in terms of my rankings, Miami defense is my number 8 defense. If you exclude the Dallas Cowboys, who have already played this week, they're technically my number 7 going into this upcoming Monday's game. So I don't mind it. Also, do I try to trade Mason now or ride him as long as I could? I don't have Christian McCaffrey. You should try to trade him now. And if you can, try to trade him to the McCaffrey owner. If you can't trade him to the McCaffrey owner, cash in on anything that you can. You could get technically 4 good weeks out of him, but after that, he's gone. And then if you hadn't had already cashed in on him, you really have no opportunity to do anything with him afterward, except for hope that McCaffrey gets hurt again, which, again, that's voodoo magic that we don't like. Moving on. Param sends in a question. Thank you, Param. Says in a 12-team half PPR, pick 2. One has to be a wide receiver. Okay, so we have Jaden Reed, Jamison Williams, Jacoby Myers, and then the other one has to be a running back. Okay, cool. So of the available options that you have, if Jordan Love is active on Sunday morning, we're going to play Jaden Reed amongst your potential wide receiver options. Then you would also, alongside of him, play Zach Moss. Now, if we're going to be in a situation in which Jordan Love is not active, then you would pivot and probably play Jacoby Myers. So Reed and Moss, otherwise Myers and Moss. Thank you. Toby Martin sends in a question, says, drop Mooney for Christian Watson? No, I'd prefer to have Mooney rest the season, especially in a full PPR. Thank you. Matt Tate sends in a question. Matt, there wasn't anything attached, my man. If you could do me a favor, type in the live chat, I'd be greatly appreciated. Again, for those of you who are joining us this afternoon or on this Friday night live stream, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well. For the volume of people who are in here on Friday nights, I mean, I cannot thank you guys enough for spending your time with me. You can be anywhere else doing anything, and you decide to be here, so I greatly appreciate that. Thank you. Again, tomorrow morning, I'll be back here live streaming on the channel from around 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, like we do every single Saturday afternoon. Additionally, I will also be back here on Sunday morning, starting at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. The only time that is going to change in terms of Sunday morning live stream schedule, 3 hours every Sunday, the only time that changes is when there is London or Germany or any sort of out-of-country game. Starting week 5, we have a Sunday morning game that starts at 6:30 a.m. PST. So that means Andrew's live stream will begin at 6 a.m. because the Jets take on the Vikings at 6:30 a.m. in London. So that's the only other thing that your man will be changing that for. Keep that in mind and keep that remembered for future weeks. Jose Rodriguez sends in a question, says, is it time to sell Christian McCaffrey? What do I do? What do I get? If you're going to sell Christian McCaffrey, I better be getting back an RB1. Yeah. So if I'm going to sell McCaffrey, I better be getting back a Gibbs. I better be getting back you're not going to get a Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. You better, you know what I mean? Like, I want top tier value. I'm not trying to sell him for Joe Mixon. I want actual legit value. Otherwise, I'll die on the shield. Thank you. Bacon says, full PPR. Who do I start, Freiermuth or Conklin? I think Freiermuth's overall upside is capped a little bit. Let's go with Conklin there. Thank you. C-Crip sends in a question. Says, I'm playing Shakir over Garrett Wilson and Josh Jacobs in a full PPR. Cool. I have no issue with that. I mean, again, it is your team. You are the final decision maker, and that's very easily could end up being the better play of the bunch. I don't have an issue with it. Officer Ron sends in a question. Says, full PPR. I'm currently 1-2. My quarterback is Josh Allen. My running backs are Mixon, Etienne, Pollard, Roschon, Braylon Allen. My wide receivers consist of Rice, Neighbors, Marvin Harrison. Man, you hit gold like no other on wide receiver. Rice, Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison. Higgins, Shakir, Worthy. I mean, I don't care about Higgins, Shakir, Worthy. Rice, Neighbors, and Harrison has pretty much like that's your championship. Like if these guys keep doing it, you'll eventually start racking wins. And when you do, it's going to be tough to stop your team. Should I try to upgrade a running back? If you can upgrade a running back, you would use Higgins, Shakir, Worthy alongside of any of these running backs in order to do so. So yes, I would say yeah, you should. If you can, obviously Mixon is one that you could end up keeping alongside of ETN, and then moving Pollard, Roschon, Braylon will be the kind of preferred measure. But if in fact somebody prefers to get Mixon in exchange, and you're going to get a good enough running back in return, and you're going to send like Mixon and Shakir for somebody, let's go for it. I think, again, you are so set with Allen and those three receivers. I don't care who your tight end is. As long as you get two solid running backs, I'd be willing to give away all five. I'd be legitimately, like, you have 8 players here that I'm looking at on your team. Mixon, ETN, Pollard, Roschon, Braylon, Higgins, Shakir, Worthy. I'm willing to trade all 8 of them in order to get 3 players back. If you, I'm ready to just dump the mag of the team in order to bring back value that can just float the team for the remainder of the year, because you've got studs across the board, my man. Holy moly. Okay, let's scroll back up. We got to find Matt Tate's question. Where's Matt at? Matt, I see it. Hey, Andrew, I traded James Conner for Travis Etienne straight up. Thoughts? I don't mind it. Again, Etienne is going to get better over time, and James Conner, like he has done in his career, may have himself a situation in which he may get injured in the coming future. Never played a full healthy season. We're going to hope that he can finally do it and accomplish that this year, because if he can, he'll probably be in that top 15, either top 12 conversation potentially. But in this circumstance, I don't have an issue with the overall trade, especially in a full PPR scoring format. As for your follow-up question there, Zamir White or Cam Akers full PPR? Again, if Mixon's out, it's Cam Akers. I'm not playing Zamir White ever again unless I'm in unless legitimately I get teleported to a different universe where he's actually good at football. I just can't do it. He burnt me badly last week. I mean, just 4th degree burns. I need his skin grafts. C. Banger sends in a question, says full PPR Superflex, Matthew Stafford, Minshew, BTJ, or Michael Wilson. Out of the group, I'm playing Minshew. Thank you. We move on to a question that comes in from Rusty Wright, who says, in a half PPR, start 2. Hill, Reed, Amari Cooper, Rome Odunze. Thanks, Doc. No problem. So if we're in a situation in which Jordan Love is active and playing, and Tyler Huntley plays quarterback for the Dolphins, I'm playing Hill and Reed. If we can't get a confirmation on Hill, then I'm just going to play Reed and Amari Cooper this week. Thank you. Again, that's under the assumption that Jordan Love plays. Now, if we get to Sunday morning and there's no Jordan Love, it's Amari Cooper and Hill regardless. Thank you. Let's see here. We move on to 5 Stern Chris. Thank you, 5. Says full PPR this week. Najee Harris or Terry McLaurin. Najee Harris, if he falls into the end zone, and I'm not saying he scores a touchdown, falls into the end zone, like he's gifted a touchdown, which is very much so in the realm of possibility considering they take on the Colts. That, again, is an awful defense across the board. If he's able to fall into the end zone, he probably outscores Terry McLaurin without a doubt. But if he doesn't, and he continues this streak of not scoring touchdowns, I'd rather just have Terry McLaurin. So it's just a matter of, like, how do we coin toss this to figure it out? Considering that game for Arizona versus Washington, yeah, considering this game is going to be a high-scoring one, I'd probably just stick with Terry there. Thank you. Damian sends in a question, says in a full PPR, for this week, should I start Elijah Higgins or Brenton Strange? Also, okay, so first and foremost, between those two valuable options, Elijah Higgins I haven't seen enough of in his career to be like really confident that he can fill in and be a great option. The fact of the matter is the Cardinals like to use their tight ends just about as much as anybody in the league. Last season, they were tied for most tight end targets amongst all teams with the Minnesota Vikings. So we know that their offensive coordinator, who is a former tight ends coach for the Cleveland Browns, wants to utilize the tight end position. And in the absence of Trey McBride, we would have to assume that there's a potential in which most likely than not, Higgins will be implemented. But am I comfortable enough starting him over Brenton Strange? How does Houston do against tight ends? Let me check here. I mean, if they haven't played anybody that has a good tight end, then it's a little bit different in that circumstance. But let me check just really quickly, because typically Houston is good against tight ends off the top of my head. Last week they gave up I'd play Higgins. Let's just roll with Higgins at this point. Elijah Higgins would be the play. I'm willing to take the risk on it. As for your next question, Also, I traded Brian Thomas Jr. and J.K. Dobbins for Higgins and Najee Harris. What do you think? I like the Higgins move. You took a little bit of a downgrade theoretically at running back, but I think Najee Harris, again, over time gets better. Once Najee Harris gets to week 6 or 7, that's when he becomes the pinnacle Najee Harris, and he begins to really string together great games. He's done that in each of the last 2 years. I was waiting for about week 6 to go ahead and start suggesting and yelling from the rooftops, everybody trade for Najee, but getting him a little bit earlier, I don't mind it. Thank you. Chris Rosado sends in a question, says, would you trade Rachaad White for Michael Pittman Jr.? No, I don't want Michael Pittman Jr. Again, I don't trust the quarterback, and I'd rather have a part-time running back because I still can get like Austin Eckler value out of Rachaad White rest of the season, assuming he doesn't play better. Smokey the Cat sends in a question, says, please rate any moves. 12-team full PPR flex, one flex. Okay, very well. We have Josh Allen, fantastic. Malik Neighbors, Najee Harris, fantastic. Bijan Robinson, Zach Moss. I mean, again, Bijan's great, can be better. Moss has been, better than we initially anticipated based on the volume of touches, so that's also great. Pitts, whatever. Then you have Godwin, great. Braylon, Chase Brown, Algier, Durendo, Bucky. Okay, so you've got just a bunch of stud kind of, you pretty much secured every single person's handcuff on your bench. I would love a little bit more depth, maybe another tight end to invest in potentially, maybe dropping Durendo in order to accomplish that. You drop him. You pick up another tight end so that just in case you have an investment on another tight end that may end up popping off and becoming something of value. Probably unlikely that it occurs, but I'd still be willing to take the risk and the investment on that. Otherwise, it's a great looking team overall. Do I suggest you make any moves? Quite frankly, I'm not moving Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, Godwin, unless again, if you're going to move any of those three, you better be getting back a top tier option. I mentioned it earlier. Unless someone's giving you Amon-Ra, AJ Brown, etc., I don't want to hear it. Nico Collins, JJ, that's it. Those are the guys that are right after them in those overall conversation of the top 12. As for Allen doesn't move, yeah, that's it. You're good to go. Good looking team there, Smokey. Well done. C. Banger sends in a question as a follow-up. Says, rest of season PPR, Stafford, Pickens, or Cousins and B-Rob? Really good question. Okay, so let's say we're just in a bubble and I don't know any context to what your team looks like. Rest of season value, Stafford is going to be the better quarterback. Because once he gets back Cooper Kupp and the value of Puka Nacua, Stafford is just inherently going to be far more pass heavy in the offense, especially when their upcoming games are going to be a lot of potential shootouts, especially considering they're taking on Seattle, San Francisco, the Arizona Cardinals within their own division, a lot of high-powered teams. So in that circumstance, full PPR, if it's like a super flex format and you have to start them every week, I'd probably lean in that direction, keeping Stafford and Pickens. If you're not in a super flex and you're just like, hey, I can get this as a backup, but it's between Pickens and B-Rob, I'd probably just go with B-Rob there. Thank you. Eric Nixon sends in a question. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Says a 3 wide receiver, 1 flex, full PPR format. I have the following options: Jacoby Myers, Darnell Mooney, Michael Wilson, Juwan Jennings, and Rashid Shaheed. Great options across the board. You're in a really good spot here. Hopefully all of them produce well, and I think that's very much so in the realm of possibility going into this week, but this is the way that this is going to work, Eric. If Juwan Jennings does in fact play, and there is no Deebo Samuel, you won't know that until, of course, the afternoon slate of games on Sunday afternoon. The San Francisco 49ers do not take on the New England Patriots until 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. EST. So you would need a pivoting option theoretically for him. The only pivoting options that I see based on what you currently have, let me just confirm this. Let's go to week 4 NFL. So the only pivoting options that I can see that you have available are Michael Wilson and Jacoby Myers. So this is the way that I would play it. You're going to play Mooney and Shaheed in the morning window. And then you will either play 2 of the 3 of Myers, Wilson, and Jennings based on Jennings' overall status, okay, because of Deebo. So Mooney and Shaheed are full goes without a doubt. If Jennings does end up starting, you would play Jennings alongside of Myers. If Deebo is active and it's going to hurt the value of Jennings, then you would pivot off of Jennings and play Wilson and Myers. Okay, Eric? Thank you. Appreciate it. Chris Rosado sends in a question. Says, trade Rachaad White for Dobbins and Pittman. Trade Rachaad White for Dobbins. I'm cool with that. That's fine by me. I don't want Pittman. If I can get Dobbins, though, I have no issue with that at all. Again, the Chargers' injuries are very much so worrisome, but I think I'm willing to take the risk. Thank you. Jet says, dropping question in chat. Sounds good, Jet. Thank you. All right, Jet, let's see where you're at. All right, Jet says, where art thou question? Okay. How do you handle this? Full PPR, start 4. Moss, Higgins, JSN, Kenneth Walker, Deebo Samuel, Garrett Wilson, Dobbins, Keenan Allen. Ridiculous depth. Yeah, to say the very least. So, full PPR format. The way that I would approach it is the following. If Deebo Samuel's active, I want to play him. So the question is, what is your pivoting option to Deebo Samuel in the event that you would theoretically pivot off of him to another option? You have, immediately, I can see JSN and Kenneth Walker that play on Monday, which would be that theoretical pivoting option available to you. So you're good to go in that scenario. So the way that I would approach this, Jet, is I'm playing Moss as my number 1, and I have 3 more to fill in. So I play Moss number 1. I'd probably play Garrett Wilson 2. Then I'm in the conversation of then having to pick between these options. Okay. I'm not playing Kenneth Walker. Jason Deebo. Okay. So under the assumption that Deebo suits up, it would go Moss, Garrett Wilson, Deebo Samuel, and JSN. In the event that Deebo does not play, let me confirm this. Hold up. Never mind. Scratch that. We need to do something else. Okay. Notepad. So I'm pulling out the notepad. So Moss, Garrett Wilson, Higgins have to play. In the event that Deebo is active, you pivot from Deebo to JSN. Or sorry, if he's active, you play Deebo alongside of Moss, Garrett Wilson, Higgins. If he is inactive, you play JSN for Monday night. That's the way that I would approach it. Oh, you have Keenan Allen as well? Shit. Oh, man. Okay, scratch that. Pulling it back. You would play Moss, Garrett Wilson, Keenan Allen in a full PPR. Deebo would then pivot to JSN still. Okay, got it? So Moss, Garrett Wilson, Keenan Allen in the lineup, assuming Keenan Allen plays. If Keenan Allen doesn't play, then you play Higgins. Dude, you've got such a contingency disaster, but hopefully this makes sense. Again, I'm going to say it one more time, Jet, so we're all on the same page. Moss and Garrett Wilson are the go-tos. They have to play. Higgins plays if Keenan Allen can't. Otherwise, Keenan Allen gets the starter as the number 3. Deebo plays. If he cannot, you play JSN. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. That took a long time, but again, I needed to kind of organize that because there's like 10 players there. All right. Amon sends in a question. Says, Baker Mayfield or Jared Goff rest of season? That's a really good question. Also, is it worth using my number 5 overall waiver on someone dropped like Dalton Schultz? Currently, my tight end is Evan Ingram, Tyler Conklin. No, I don't want Dalton Schultz. Not interested. I think what you have is far better than what is currently available. I would not use your waiver priority for that. Now, as for your prior question, Baker Mayfield versus Jared Goff rest of season, Baker has looked like the better quarterback, but I think going forward, Jared Goff will find himself. It's been really tough. That game against Tampa Bay, I mean, they had 470 total yards of offense and scored 0 touchdowns. Those scenarios very rarely exist. I think Jared Goff will be better rest of the season, but very slow slightly. So if you want to keep Baker, I don't have an issue with it because, again, they're both pocket quarterbacks. They don't really have any rushing upside. Even though Baker scoots a little bit every now and then, it's nothing crazy. Thank you, Amon. Appreciate it. Steve sends in a question. Says, start 3. We have Nico Collins, Diggs, Godwin, DK Metcalf, and Trey Tucker. Yeah, not interested in Trey Tucker, but of the available options that you do have, Nico Collins is an automatic start number 1. Then it would go Godwin 2 and DK 3. Now, Diggs at number 4 is the odd man out, which I would like to play because of the absence of Tank Dell. But quite frankly, I think the other alternative options are just as good, if not better, and have incredible matchups. So Nico, Godwin, and DK are my guys. Diggs, unfortunately, has to sit on the bench, even though it makes me sick to my stomach. It's just because you have too much depth. Thank you. Daniel Barnes sends in a question, says, start Love, Caleb, or Fields? Out of the 3, I prefer to play Fields within the given week. He's played incredibly well as of late, and the Indianapolis Colts are awful. As for your follow-up question, Likely or Conklin, I'm going to probably lean towards playing Tyler Conklin. For some reason, I was like, why am I saying Tyler? No, that's his name. All right, moving on. Ashley Gomez sends in a question. Says, in a half PPR, Myers, Kirk, Shakir, Jamison, Williams, Steele. I need 2 for the flex. Very well. Of the available options you have, the way that I would approach it in a half PPR is most likely going with Shakir and Myers. Do I want to play Myers over Kirk? Or do I want to play Kirk over Shakir? The way that I see, you know what? It's probably Myers and Kirk. That's the way I'd go about it. Those are the 2. Thank you. Elseway sends in a question, says, drop Moody for Narvison. I don't mind it. Especially if Jordan Love's back, I'd say yes. I have the Vikings defense. I think that's irrelevant. The thing is, the Vikings defense is like you're hoping not for like a lack of, I mean, honestly, you're hoping for field goals. You're hoping for them not to score touchdowns. So I think that's just like a double whammy, right? Let's see here. Thrax sends in a question, says wide receiver trades, question mark. I got Cook, JT, Montgomery, Hall. Get rid of who? If you're trading any of these options, it's James Cook. If I'm going to change, it's either James Cook or Montgomery. Depends on who you kind of want to disown in this scenario. But if it's me, I probably end up moving James Cook just because I don't like the threat potential that Josh Allen provides. So in this scenario, if I'm going to trade James Cook, I'm probably moving him for, I mean, I better get, look, let's just put it this way. If you go to someone and you say, hey, you want Montgomery or you want Cook? I'm willing to give up either. I'm keeping Hall or JT, but regardless of who they want, I better be getting back a top 12 wide receiver, okay? So what I mean by top 12 wide receiver for rest of the season, they better be giving me back. I mean, it's one of these following names, right? Obviously, some of them are off the table, but I'm going to name it anyway. They're either going to have to give me back Jefferson, Chase, Amon-Ra, A.J. Brown, Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, Nico Collins, that's 8. They also, Rice is 9. Lamb is 10. Okay, then we get to the 11 range, which is like, okay, maybe I'm willing to take, let's say Drake London, maybe. Or Tyreek Hill, maybe. Otherwise, they'd have to give me like Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp with another piece in order to get the running back off my hand. Because I would hope that I get a player that has top 10 upside rest of the season, but I still get a little bit of a compensation for the fact that I'm getting a wide receiver off of them that they no longer have to play and that I have to keep on my bench in hopes that they get healthy. Otherwise, I don't want anything. Thank you. Again, if you're going to trade away a running back that's putting up 18 points, I better be getting back a wide receiver that's putting up at least 16, right? Otherwise, what's the point? Let's see here. Jose Rodriguez says, also, how high do we rate Shakir? Will he be better? I mean, shoot, he could definitely be better. Think about it. Like, they did all their production in the first half. He didn't do anything in the second half of the game. So imagine if he does damage in the second half of a game. Be pretty fun, right? If it's a shootout, it's going to be a really exciting game, to say the very least. Okay. So, again, I kind of want to remind you guys again, earlier today, we dropped the Hidden Gems video. If you guys haven't checked it out, be sure to do so. Again, outside of that, tomorrow I'll be back at 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Sunday morning, I'll be back from 7 to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I appreciate y'all. Thank you very much. We've been here for an hour and 20. Typically, I like to keep the streams between an hour and a half. We've kind of met that midpoint. If you guys have any questions regarding potential pick'em slips that we're putting together going into this weekend, yesterday, your boy, I mean, I don't know how it happened. I mean, I know how it happened, but I got lucky. Like, I literally, Daniel Jones threw that pick at the final play of the game, and my 4-leg hit. I mean, I don't know. But either way, via Underdog, if you guys want to follow my potential plays, it's included at the end of this video. Obviously, don't be a degenerate like me and put as much money down as I do. I do it because, you know, I can afford to do it. And I'm also a little bit unhinged at times. So in this circumstance, check it out if you guys would like. Outside of that, if you guys want my rankings for Sunday morning, all you got to do is head on over to Underdog. There's a link down in the description. You got to sign up today using code Andrew, make a first-time deposit minimum of $10. You can use those $10 to put together a potential pick'em slip and or play, you know, some of the draft games within the given week if you're interested. Obviously, you want to put in that money to use it and try to maybe win some back, which would be great. But you'll get my rankings sent to you from my email directly to yours. If you guys have signed up in the last week and you're here in the chat, expect that email to come in around like 4 or 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. And be sure to check your spam folder in case it's not in your main folder because it's a random email being sent from me, which again, you've never received from before. Outside of that, you can check out the Patreon. We have, of course, unlimited questions answered there. If you guys want to ask me any and all questions, that is the most valuable resource. Otherwise, you'll get Sunday morning rankings, Thursday rankings, and of course, private Discord access. Thank you. All right, last couple questions here before Andrew gets out of here. Appreciate you guys, you know, of course, choosing to spend your time here today with myself. Greatly appreciate that. We have Damien who says the following. Pick 2, flex. Najee, Keenan Allen, Addison, T. Higgins. What's your scoring format, Damien? Let me know. Thank you. Jonathan Rife says, I'm going somewhere else. You never answer my questions. No problem, Jonathan. Have a night. Have a good night. Let's see here. Ali says, full PPR, pick 2. Braylon. I have Breece Hall, Keenan Allen, Ridley, Michael Wilson. Also, Braylon or Ayuk for Diggs. Braylon Ayuk for Diggs. Okay, so if we're talking about potential trade opportunities here, the idea of trading Ayuk for Diggs, I don't mind. I think they have relatively similar value rest of the season. So but giving away Braylon, considering you have Breece Hall, is kind of risky. Yeah, so at that point, just probably keep it. Ollie. Kittle or Laporta, they both fully practiced, but Kittle's probably the better of the two based on how he's played thus far this season when healthy. Waddle or Ridley rest of the season? Waddle. I don't trust. Listen, as much as I don't trust the quarterback situation in Miami, I do not trust the quarterback situation in Tennessee at all. I don't care how many Will Levis commercials I see with mayonnaise. I do not trust the man with the football. Constantino says Jennings, Shaheed, or Waddle. Under the assumption that Debo is out, you're going to play Jennings. But here's the issue. You won't know that until the afternoon slate of games, Constantino. So you either have to play Shaheed in the morning or take the risk and either maybe perhaps not play Jennings and be forced to playing Waddle on Monday night. In that kind of a scenario, I'd probably just play Shaheed and I'd bite the bullet because I don't know the active nature and status of Debo Samuel going into that game unless it is revealed in the next 24 to 48 hours. Low-key want to start Pickens over Ayuk. Let's do it. Yeah, shit, let's go for it. I don't have an issue with that. I have no issue with that at all. Andrew, Geno or Fields? I like them both. If you're playing in a 4-point per passing touchdown league, I think it's relatively close, but I still have Geno Smith ahead of him. If it was a 6-point, I'd feel way more comfortable with Geno in that circumstance. Bucky for Mark Andrews. Trey and Evan Ingram are out, and I get Zach E or Conklin or Pratt Fryermuth. So if you're going to be trading away Bucky Irving for Mark Andrews, like technically you have Trey McBride still on roster, so why even make this trade? I'd rather just keep Bucky and go pick up Tyler Conklin off of the waivers and utilize him for just this 1 week because Trey McBride will be back with the concussion protocol next week at very least. Yeah. Roy Powell says, thoughts on Hawkinson rest of the season? Where would he rank? If Hawkinson was healthy this week, okay, theoretically, just putting it out there, if Hawkinson was healthy this week, he would be in my top 3 rankings. And he would consistently be, and once he's back, he is going to be in my top 3 rankings until the remainder of the season. That is how good Hawkinson is. ACL injuries affect wide receivers and tight ends way differently than they do to running backs. The recovery process for a wide receiver in comparison to a tight end is significantly different to the extent to where Hawkinson's even going to come back early from the 9-month expectation of the injury, right? Typically, when you get surgery on your ACL, they say, oh, the window is 9 months. He had his surgery at the end of January of this year because they had to wait for the swelling to go down for multiple weeks. After they had the surgery, the guy's going to still return probably on that like window of barely getting to 9 months, probably earlier. So Hawkinson's a different threat. And considering how well we have seen Sam Darnold playing and how much that team loves to utilize the tight end position, I understand they haven't utilized it thus far this season because primarily Johnny Munt is no TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson is him. So yeah, you'll never hear me say anything bad about Hawkinson. That guy is an absolute machine of a fantasy option. All right, guys. Ando in the chat says, at PPR wide receiver 2 in flex, we have Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, Pittman, and I'm never playing Pittman. I'm not playing Rashad White either. I'm playing Higgins and Tyreek Hill there, Ando. Blake says Higgins or JSN in a full PPR. In a full PPR, I'm probably playing JSN there. Dexter Brett says Stevenson, Dobbins, Akers if Mixon is out. Even if Mixon is out, I'm still playing Stevenson over the bunch. Thank you. All right, guys. I think that'll cover it. Is it okay to drop Ford right now? Christopher, depends on what you're dropping him for. If you have another... Again, if you're not going to play him and you can't trade him, then sure. I mean, shoot. You know, at that point, you don't even need to ask me. If you can answer those 2 questions and they're both yes, then keep it moving. You're good to go. All right. I think that's it. I just want to make sure we're good to go. And yep, let's make sure I don't miss any super chats that were sent in because I would hate for that to be the case. I've done it in the past and it makes me feel like shit. Okay, cool. We're good to go. All right, guys. A couple more questions and we're out. ECKZ says Xavier Worthy, BTJ, Bucky for Tank Dell or Keenan Allen and Zach Moss. Yeah, I'll take Keenan Allen, Zach Moss. Thank you. LOL, we got the same do not playlist. Pittman number 1, Rashad number 2. Yeah, I'm just not interested. Not anymore. I've learned, listen, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, I'm fucking stupid. I've been fooled a couple times here. So Michael Pittman is definitely on that not going to play list this week. As for Rachaad White, he was good in week 1. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's good again this week, But right now, in comparison to some of these alternative options, I'd feel far more comfortable with other players. Why did Singletary suck when everyone played him? Great question, Evan. I think that's just like kind of the poetic nature of fantasy football. Let's see here. Junior in the live chat says, "Hi, Andrew. I'm in a bind. In a half PPR, I've got Dell out. Very well. I have London, Kirk, Watson, or Adunze. Okay, cool. I need 2. Fantastic. Let's play London and let's play Kirk. Also, my running backs, I have Christian McCaffrey out. I have White, Pollard, Kyron, Bucky, Chandler. I need 3. Cool. So I play Kyron number 1, Pollard number 2, and if it's White, as in Rachaad White, he would be the number 3 out of the group. Thank you. Anakin sends in a question, says Steelers or Houston defense? Steelers. Thank you. Moving on to DTN Rome 88 says, drop Benson for Leggett. Do you have James Conner? If you don't have James Conner, I could justify the movement of Trey Benson off of your team. Ryan Stevens says, I'm the worst fantasy manager of all time. I started Singletary this week over Reed and Cooper. Yeah, that's... Ooh, buddy. That's tough. That one hurts. Cliff, I don't think you're the worst manager, though. Let's take it easy. You know what's funny today? I was looking at, when I was preparing for my Hidden Gems video, I was looking at Yahoo Fantasy because I talk about like, okay, this player is currently being started in this many leagues and is being rostered in this many leagues, right? Those are the kind of stats that I throw around in those videos. So when I look up Christian McCaffrey, okay, and I go to players who currently are starting him, it says, and I quote, as of right now, there are 14% of leagues that are starting Christian McCaffrey, okay? Those are the worst managers because of those. Okay, anyway, thank you. Moving on. I almost, listen, we almost... we're good to go. Ramondre Stevenson or Chuba Hubbard? Chuba Hubbard for sure. You missed mine. Thanks, Damien. I think I answered yours, but hey, let me go back and answer it anyway. Damien says Najee Harris, Keenan Allen, Addison, Higgins. Yeah. So I mentioned this earlier. Oh, you know what, Damien? I asked you what your scoring format was. That's why I forgot. Damien, did you end up typing it full PPR? Damien, I'm an idiot. Thank you. I appreciate you following up on that. Najee, Keenan Allen, Addison, T. Higgins. So of the available in a full PPR, I'd play Higgins and Keenan Allen, assuming Keenan Allen does play. If Keenan Allen is going to be out this week, I'd go Najee Harris and I'd go T. Higgins. I'd give Addison an extra week of time. Thank you. Apologies for that, Damien. I knew I was forgetting something. That's why I hadn't left yet. Okay, let's see here. Full PPR, Juwan Jennings or Garrett Wilson if Debo's out. If Debo's out, I'm playing Juwan Jennings there, David Nutella. Let's see here. Gavin says, appreciate... Okay, Evan, okay. Cliff Victoria says, Andrew, some managers ignore their teams early, probably league free leagues. Yeah, probably. But either way, the fact that is a potential stat is absolutely ridiculous. It shouldn't exist like that. I like money leagues because managers try longer. Of course. Listen, here's the thing, right? You have to play in a money league, or you have to play in a league in which you are getting punished if you are last place. That's it. If you don't play with an incentive to not lose, then what's the point, right? You can just turn it off at any time and not have to worry about it. There needs to be a risk and reward kind of factor. Did you answer my question? I thought he was logging off. I did answer your question. I would say rewind, but I don't think you'll be able to find it, Ali. Let me go back. Let me scroll back up and see if I can find your question in the chat. If I can, I'll re-answer it. But if not... you had said, okay, so this is my answer to your question. Considering you have Breece Hall, I don't want to trade away Braylon Allen because I consider Ayuk and Diggs to have similar value rest of the season. So I'm not really interested in moving on from Braylon because it leaves your Breece investment naked without a handcuff. Now, as for your 2 picks in a full PPR of the available options, it's Keenan Allen and most likely playing Ridley this week. Thank you. All right. Just Chrome sends in a question. Thank you, Just Chrome. Appreciate that. Says the following. Flex, PPR, Mixon, question mark. Kelsey, Waddle, Christian Kirk, Steele. If I'm playing one flex out of all these options, if Mixon is active, he's in my lineup. If he is not active, I'm playing Kelsey. Thank you. Andrew, go to sleep. All right, Rosa, I will. PPR, Rome Dunze or Amari Cooper? Amari Cooper, David. Purdy or Baker? Considering, okay, you won't know if Debo is active, but even if Debo is inactive, because George Kittle is available, I'm going to play Purdy in that situation. Thank you. Actually, no. Let's play Baker. Let's just be a little bit safer with it. I don't want to mess around and get like a full Jordan Mason 2-touchdown game and Purdy has 1 touchdown with 250 yards. Yeah, no, forget that. Let's just play Baker. He's got more upside as well in the given matchup. Sepman1 says full PPR, pick 3, Rashad White, Najee Harris, T. Pollard, or Higgins. Okay, cool. Out of the available options, I'm playing T. Higgins, Tony Pollard, and Najee Harris. I'm benching Rashad White. Thank you. Worst running back you'd settle for in a Hurts trade? If I'm going to trade away Jalen Hurts, the running back that I would like in return at very base minimum, Tony Pollard, Travis Etienne, Brian Robinson Jr., Ramondre Stevenson. That pretty much, Josh Jacobs, that covers it. I think Ramondre may be a little bit, I think I might not be okay with that one actually. But something of that nature. Like if I'm going to give the top 2 quarterback away, I better be getting back at least something good, right? Like I had to utilize a 4th or 5th round pick to get Jalen Hurts. So you go to your draft, look at the draft results, see what running backs were picked in the, in that range, or at least are kind of in that RB 15, 16, 20 range. Thank you. Akuma187 says full PPR. Last question of the day, by the way. After Daniel Barnes, and then we'll be done. Akuma says full PPR. Pick 2, 10-team league. Bowers, Akers, Terry Ridley. Okay, so of the available options in a full PPR, I'm playing Bowers and Terry McLaurin. Thank you. Moving on to Daniel Barnes, who says 1 point per reception. Love, Carr, Mason, Achane, Montgomery, any moves. So Love and Carr, great, but if Love is playing, you want him in your lineup. Achane, Montgomery are great running backs. Mason should be traded away. Brooks is a good next couple weeks investment. Lamb, Marvin Harrison, beautiful. DJ Moore, great. London, great. Okay, cool. You got a really good team. Just got to trade Mason. If you take Mason, you take BTJ, and you try to get something in exchange, beautiful. Preferably, what we want back is running back depth. If you cannot acquire that, anything will suffice. Because honestly, there is a ticking time bomb around the nature of Mason with the impending doom of the return of Christian McCaffrey in the coming weeks. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm cueing the music. I appreciate y'all coming through tonight, spending your time here tonight. I'll be back tomorrow, 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Enjoy the rest of your night. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.